And you would see that understanding the Greek would help us have a better take about all of it. So we would see that the Greek word is prospolemsia and prospolemtit, the verb in 2:1 and 2:9. It means face receiving or face taken. So it is a Semitism built on the Hebrew idiom of Nazapanim, to lift the face. The picture, as you can see in my beautiful drawing, that there is a court and then he rules. To receive the face is to decide the case by face. And the word appears to be a Christian coinage. It is not a classical Greek. Someone needed a noun for this sin and had to be built out of the Septuagint. And you would see there are three more words that are hidden by the English: the synagogue, the diakrithet, and the diacrinominos. These words, with the kata kushatai, if I read it correctly, these are not words that the English translation gives justice. For the synagogue in the NYV, it has your meeting. James wrote synagogue. This is the only place in the whole New Testament where a Christian assembly gets this word. It means a real room with real seating. While these, in a way, they have you not discriminated among yourself and become judges. The third one is mercy triumphs over judgment. It's not outweighs, not replace. It is a boasting against, a verb of victory. And we would see how the usage of these specific words, in a way or another, makes everything clearer. For that, when we read, and we would find here in the second verse, for if a man with a golden or a gold ring in fine clothing comes into your synagogue, and a poor man in filthy clothing also comes in. Here, the gold ring and the fine clothings should not be taken as face value for what the Hilary of Arles on verse 2 he says. What James says here is what applies not just to the ring, but to any sign of wealth, for the ring is meant to stand for treasure, house of riches. And in the ancient of Rome, the Roman citizens or the Romans in high classes would be distinguished by rings. The citizens usually had something that would say that they are citizens. So it applies the same rule here about the ring and pushes it out of our throats. As you can see, the Annulus Aureus, the golden ring, was the legal badge of the Roman equestrian order. It's not a jewelry, it's a rank you could wear. So, a man walks into a Christian synagogue, a Christian place where he is seated, wearing his civic rank on his hand, and the church reads it correctly and seats him accordingly. Everyone in the room does their job, probably, but everyone in the room does the job. That is, obviously, the problem is that everyone is doing the job. You should not do that job here, which would take us to the assembly builds a court, then gets dragged in it. As you can see, haven't you shown partiality among yourself and become judges with evil thoughts? You need to think about the word judges because it is the most important word here. For listen, my beloved brothers, didn't God chose those who are poor in this world? But you have dishonored the poor man. Don't the rich oppress you and personally drag you before the courts? Don't the people that you show favorism to are also the same people that oppress you? They blaspheme the honorable name by which you are called. However, you should do the opposite. Are they not the ones dragging you into courts? Are they not the ones that are playing the actual judges? For you are playing a role that was not given to you. That is what James is trying to say. For you act like judges in front of real human judges who persecute you, who kill you and drag you into court, and you show favoritism to them. And It's logical because always we can see that the victim copies the machine that victimizes him. That is ordinary. James, he names the oppressors precisely, and he names what they do to people. He shows them that the grievance is completely legitimate, and he does not use it at all to tell his people to go and fight them. He doesn't say that at all. He counters the lynching and he refuses it while holding a justified one in his hand. That is something that you should pay attention to him, that he doesn't reply to violence with violence. And now there is the guilty of all. Guilty of all, for whoever keeps the whole law and yet stumbles in one point, if you miss one point, he became guilty of all. So is it true that if I miss one single piece of the law that I have became a murderer, an adulterer, someone with no faith? But if you look at the word guilty of all, in Greek it is inachos, if I read it correctly. A courtroom word meaning liable, answerable, and it is liable in respect of all. But it never says you committed all. And when you see in the next verse, he says, you have become a transgressor of the law, parabates, a status in relationship to a person. Saint Augustine had a problem with this idea too, because it may promote maximalism. And he read it and said, but if you ask someone or ask the wife of the person who had cheated on her by a kiss or committed an adultery in another way, if you ask her, has he been unfaithful? There is no 8% faithfulness. She would ultimately says, yes, he has been unfaithful regardless of the degree of the sin that the person has committed, because it is all in relationship to a relation between a person and another. For if you broke the law, you didn't break a list, you broke a relationship with the maker of that law. It says, anyone who speaks against a brother or sister or judges them speaks against the law and judges it. There is only one lawgiver and judge, but you, who are you to judge your brother? This is chapter 4. It is related to everything that we are talking about in that sense. And also there is this, have you shown partiality among yourself and become judges with evil? It technically leads us to this aspect, the bad that Augustine says in his letters. And now we have to make sense of the mention of murder and adultery in both these scenarios, whether it is about James or Paul. And Hilary of Als says, why does James choose two commandments as his example? Because why are the ones which deal most closely with loving and with hating one neighbors? Adultery and murder are both things related to taking something from your neighbor. Adultery and murder, he's putting them in the same category again, saying that favoritism takes something. It takes something from your neighbor. And that's why he says, break relation anywhere, and the relation is broken. Guilty of all is following of the commandment of love your neighbor as yourself instead of contradicting it. It is why it is the same royal law and the freedom given. For Caesarius of Arles says, what does it mean to offend in one point and lose all, except to have fallen from the precept of love and thereby to have offended in all the other commandments? There is also the idea that law gives freedom for the one. In Chesterton version says, there is a paradox in his book, that Christianity in a way or another holds two opposites at the same time, which was weird for him. And his method is, when the creed goes odd, check whether the world goes odd in the same place too. The heart is not in the middle. Guess where the thing is loop-sided, and if you guessed right, you are not merely reasoning. For then Oecumenius says, the law of liberty is the one which does not recognize, for a man is a slave to the one by whom he have been overcome. For if you look at the rich man's ring, and you seat him according to that, you are a slave to that ring. For the synagogue was your synagogue. You were the one who should seat people according to your desires and whims. You should be free. But it is the one and only free man who is sitting on the floor, because he follows no law of the man, and he is not bound by all of their laws.